Have you ever wondered what Event 101 or Event 301 is? Anybody? Because we know that there was an Event 201. So just like Math 101, Math 102, or Math 201, or Spanish 103, we've grown up knowing that once you learn one level, there's a next level. And it's everywhere. I mean, they even have dummies books, right? Dummies for every subject you can think of. Because there needs to be a foundation before you can master get to the next level, right? In learning. So, when I heard of the Event 201, which we'll talk a little bit about, Alex has mentioned it already this week. When I heard about Event 201 in January of 2020, I looked it up immediately. And as somebody who is passionate about exposing the end game for United Nations Agenda 21 Sustainable Development, the agenda for the 21st century, the agenda for a one world government system, when I saw the logo right there in the middle, the first thing I saw is Agenda 21. Because the 2 and the 1, and then there's the globe in the middle. And we know that the ultimate goal of Agenda 21 is global governance. And that so I got stuck on that. So when I looked at it and I thought, okay, immediately what came to mind is, so what was Event 101? Did I miss something? Because when you look at Event 201, and we're not going to go deep into it, but I think we'll go into it enough that you will, maybe Alex has already expressed enough about it, that there is already concern about Event 201, that they're saying that it was just random, that we came up with this global exercise on this pandemic, and what are we going to do? And lo and behold, in December, the Event 201 was in October of 2019, and in December, what did we start hearing about? This pandemic, if you were paying attention, it came out in December. News of it started coming out in December. Most of the world did not hear about it until January. So I started thinking, okay, there must be something else here. So I remember calling up my friends Patrick Wood and Alex Newman and saying, what was Event 101? And they're like, I don't know. And it kind of just went, So for about a year, I kind of researched it and kind of didn't, but it still bothered me. It was like that itch on the back of back of your head that you can't get to. And so anyway, that is what this talk is about: is what's next. And I'm going to tell you what I think is Event 101. I'm pretty sure I know what Event 101 is, and if you're wanting to guess, then feel free to already throw out there what you think Event 101 is. Let me just say this. These events are so huge, like Event 201, that they disrupt our lives. Not just during the event, but our lives are disrupted forever as a result of COVID-19 and Event 201. Forever. We can never go back. The new normal is not the normal before COVID-19, because we will never go back to that, whatever normal was. So, as we are in this course of this idea called America, freedom, liberty, with an experiment that, with the thesis of can man rule himself, I think what's next for us is really important. So the experiment is, if man is not fit to govern himself, how can he be fit to govern someone else? So hence, can man rule himself? And it's under experiment right now. We know that, as I said yesterday, that we are in the decade of action. And the purpose of the decade of action is that this idea that 10 years left, or 9, because we're already in 2021, and by the year 2030 is when we are, as a global community, to fulfill on the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals to save planet Earth from not just climate change and anthropogenic man-made global warming, but also from things like critical race theory and poverty and all these things that have nothing to do with you getting out of your car. And yet what they're doing is using ideas and agendas to force this big global action called Sustainable Development Goals. And if we do not fulfill on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and let me tell you, it's not just 17 goals, because beyond the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which a lot of people don't look into, are the 169 targets, meaning other action items that go along with those goals. Like target 6.6 of Sustainable Development Goal is, as I mentioned yesterday, is to restore all water-related ecosystems. Everything is a water-related ecosystem. Because beneath the soil, water is running everywhere in the core throughout the earth. And also water is also in the sky, in the atmosphere. So all water-related systems is really everything. And they're warning us, they're scaring us, they're fear-mongering us that if we don't follow these 17 sustainable goals and their 169 targets, in the next, starting now, actually starting years ago, into or up to the year 2030, they say, including Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, that life will be uninhabitable and unrecognizable, that it'll look something like this, and these are the pictures you see. Scary, frightening, but to me, that's nothing new. I live in California and we live in desert land, but when you see that, it's like, yikes, that's, maybe we won't be able to live. It's a fear-mongering tactic, and they use pictures and media and stories and everything, wildfires and everything, to push their storyline, their narrative, to fear-monger us into believing that if we don't act now, then life will be like that. And in less than 10 years now, it'll be uninhabitable, meaning, and what's that mean? Unlivable, unrecognizable. So in my opinion, they use major events because they're not getting what they want out of us. Many people don't know about the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The decade before this one, up until the year 2019, was the decade of education. We were already supposed to know what to do to save planet Earth. And we were already supposed to be acting upon those demands that would save planet Earth, by 3.6 degrees Celsius or 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is what, about 3-point-something degrees Fahrenheit. So we were already supposed to be marching to those things, but too much of the world is not. They need crises to get us into action, and COVID-19 was that crisis where they could see as a global citizenry that we would march to the same tune. The masks. All you have to do is look around or travel to Europe to find out that we're all receiving the same directions and instructions. So we know that Event 201 is an event that's being now fleshed out even further. Because headline news today says that both my governor and the president, President Biden, are both considering another mask mandate. So as if 2 years wasn't enough. They're not done with us. We haven't learned our lesson. They need to ratchet it up. There's a book called, so this is all based on fear, right? What we're hearing is fear, and we are not reacting to their fear-mongering the way that they need to. Too many people are getting back to life before, as much as they can before COVID. So it's during shocking events that people lose a sense of direction. And you can think of some of the shocking events that have happened throughout history that have really changed the future. During shocking events, or even a tragedy like a fire in your own home, you cannot think rationally. You may think you will, but you will not. In the heat of the moment, your reactions are different. You could be acting erratically. You could be thinking about your children and getting them out of there. We were talking about this at lunch. I believe that that if the house is burning down, or maybe Alex talked about it up here, that you would break law or break commandment to get those children out. And then there's people who can get paralyzed in shocking situations, and they can't do anything. But no matter the situation and no matter your reaction, it's an opportunity for the government to take over and lead the way. And that has happened on every tragic, whether it's a war or whether it's a catastrophic wildfire in California. We become law-abiding citizens and listen to the authorities. There's an activist, and I don't necessarily care for this woman. She's a Canadian, her name is Naomi Klein, and she wrote a book called The Shock Doctrine, The Rise of Disaster Capitalism. And she argues that neoliberal free market policies, those things that Milton Friedman talked about, have risen to prominence in some developed countries. And then those citizens of those countries are, and it's a deliberate takeover of their policies. So in other words, when there's a shocking situation, for example, I'll give you one that just happened where I live. There is illegal drug grows going on not far from my ranch, where hundreds, if not thousands of acres is being used for illegal drug cartel marijuana. And even though marijuana growing is legal in California, in my county, anything over 6 grows outside is illegal, which it should be up to your local county. Everything close to you should be the way it is. In other words, it shouldn't be Gavin Newsom from Sacramento telling us 5 hours away how we should be living our lives. We as a county decided that we do not want marijuana in our county. And so we have 6 grows per person is legal. Well, a community has come in and overtaken a huge area of our county. In fact, there's over 7,000 illegal drug cartel growers now in our county. They can unseat, vote out the people we have elected to represent us. So, as a result of these illegal drug cartels and these thousands and thousands of illegal greenhouses, our sheriff has taken control of his county, which he should be. And with the Board of Supervisors, they have made policy. And that policy says that you cannot have more than 6 grows. And if you do, we're coming in and we're bulldozing. And that's what they did. Now, just to add a little bit more to that, in this event, there was also chemicals that were illegally brought in from chemicals that aren't even legal in the United States. But in order to get the best out of their grows, they were smuggling in illegal chemicals, gallons and gallons, 50 gallons. And these chemicals were spilt and used on the land. We have photos of dogs used as protection to protect their illegal drug grows, and puppies chained to trees and playing with chemical pipes. And during the fire that just happened, actually the fire's still happening, it's called the lava fire. Our sheriff and California Fire, came in, blocked all the roads off, and because the fire was in part of the grows, and in order for human safety, our law enforcement did what it did, which was evacuate people, and these illegal drug cartel growers refused to leave. What happened as a result is one illegal drug cartel grower who is in the news right now. He's a father of 3. He pointed a gun at the sheriffs, and shot went off, and the sheriff shot him. He died, and now our law enforcement is being sued for discrimination, racial discrimination. But what I want to say is that there's policies put in place in emergencies. And those policies in place used as emergencies often end up being the case forever and forevermore. So going back to Naomi Klein, she posits that in third world countries, neoliberal or globalist. Now she is for globalism. She believes in anthropogenic global warming, and I'm not saying read her book, but I am saying she has a point. That when there is a crisis, there is exploitation often in those crises. And whether or not you believe in the policies, oftentimes they are controversial and questionable. What happened in our fires is that what they did as a temporary thing is put a policy in place where you cannot drive water trucks on certain roads in Siskiyou County, because water trucks were being used to deliver hundreds of thousands of gallons of water being displaced from one area, moved to another to support illegal grows. And so now people's wells are going dry because of all that water that was moved from one location to another. So something had to be done to stop the bleeding. So they say that they'll go back to normal, that they'll release the policies that are put on the roads when the illegal drug cartel situation is taken care of. But in the meantime, we have to live with those policies. And if you think about it, we'll get into a couple large events where our lives have been forever changed, and you may think they're good ideas, and I particularly happen to think that they're taking away our freedoms and liberties, whether I like them or not. So in the shock doctrine, the idea is that you create a shock and people respond in a certain way, and it's at those times that you could take advantage of them. So Event 201. Event 201 was a pandemic exercise, and it underscores immediate need for global public-private cooperation to mitigate severe economic and societal impacts of pandemics, is what we are told. And really what it ended up into being is a global community manifesto. Global community manifesto. I used to call California Mascafornia. I think I'm going to have to start calling it again, especially reading today's headlines. Now, Johns Hopkins, who is a key player in Event 201, has this. They have a dashboard that you can go to right now. This is the dashboard that I took earlier this morning at 7:48 this morning. And this is cumulative cases of deaths of COVID. I'm shocked, but not shocked, God Almighty, that when I took this photo, look at the number of deaths, 666. I see 666 everywhere. And then later I took it just to make sure that, I wasn't seeing things. I took it when we were in here at 9:15, and the deaths have gone up, almost 300 people. So the deaths this morning, later on, are 954. So why am I showing you this dashboard? Doesn't this look scary? These are the deaths of COVID-19. When I look at that, I'm like, holy moly, this is scary. And when am I going to be impacted by this, personally? Is my life being threatened by this thing? Until I look at this, I was like, forget it. But you look at this, and it adds a sense of fear. We know, Yale tells us their goal, Yale Medicine, that the light at the end of the tunnel is what? Is this thing. That is the light at the end of the table, or at the end of the tunnel, is to be vaccinated. That is the solution to that. But we already know that. If you know about UN Agenda 21, you know that part of the goal, part of the agenda, is to control all human beings and population. This book is available on Camp Constitution's online library, and it's called Rescue Mission Planet. Usually I bring it with me, but I tried to travel, my carbon footprint lighter this time. But it's called Rescue Mission Planet Earth, a children's edition of Agenda 21, and in the first couple pages, Al Gore is quoted by saying that he wanted to create a mission to planet Earth where children were monitoring and controlling planet Earth. It also has a quote by Boutros Boutros Ghali, And it also has chapters, this is a children's book, remember? And it also has chapters like this one, you can see over here is Baby Bomb. And my cousin Nancy back there was like, oh, can you please put that picture back up? Because, you know, the people need to see that. So this is, and what Nancy said to me, and it kind of falls into this presentation. I think that what has to happen is we all come together and vet out these ideas. That we're not here just to listen to somebody talk about a bunch of slides, but we're actually here to figure out what's next. So this picture, when Nancy said, oh, you got to put up that picture where, you know, there's all these babies like as bombs dropping, and I never looked at it that way. Here was my interpretation, is, oh, God's like going, I'm confused, there's all these babies. And when Nancy said it's like a baby bomb, it's like a baby bomb drop is really what it is. And then so because Nancy said that, I started looking at other symbols within here. Because just like the FedEx logo that I usually show, right? Who knows where the arrow is? Right? In the E. And once you see it, you can never, ever, like Willie said to me the other day, you can never erase it from your brain. I usually say you can never unsee it, but Willie added to it, you can never erase it from your brain. So I started looking deeper into this picture, and it's just kind of fun. I like doing that. Look at all the cars. So it's not just about a baby bomb that Nancy said, but look at all the traffic. And look, this dump truck is dumping crud in the river there, and look, there's wildfires back there, and you can't really see, but down here is a university and all the students are walking out like this, like they're happy. But look, this is a protest, and this is a construction company. It's in Spanish, I can't, constructado or something like that, and it says no I, like shutting it down. But there's symbolism. There are meanings behind what these people do. There are messages behind what they're telling us. Then that's why I started looking into Event 201, because I saw that there was more to just this thing. And I'll tell you what they said, why they called it Event 201. It doesn't fly with me. So what's next in this book, in this chapter, is this. You see a baby, and you see what? Vaccines. This is a United Nations document. And it says immunization. Case 21 is what it says right there in that circle. In the late 1970s, when vaccines reached only 10% of the developing world's children, the international community set the ambitious target of immunizing 80% of the world's children by the end of the decade. Now, if you heard that closely, originally it said the developing worlds. That was dropped out. So immunizing not just the developing world's children, but now the world's children. That target was reached at the end of 1990. The target now is to get immunization to 90% of children under 1 year by the year 2000. And this book was published in 1994. You can see their triangles. We always talk about sustainable development being triangles. The green triangle, environment, health, money. This falls under their health. Okay, so further. This is Ekaterina Kotova. She was a 15-year-old when she drew this, just wonderful picture of planet Earth. And then the book goes on to say there's a lot in UN Agenda 21 about playing a critical role, or about women playing a critical role in population, but aren't men usually the problem? Yes, the United Nations says, there's a lot of male authority, but not much male responsibility in relation to childbearing. Men are not burdened with the problem of giving birth. They tend to exploit children, sending them to work instead of investing in their education. What can children do? They should challenge their parents not to have any more children until they can look after them properly. And then this book tells children the planet groans every time it registers another birth. And we know that Bill Gates, who's behind Event 201, has a formula out there about how to depopulate planet Earth. We just need to expose these things. So Event 201 has some players, including Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security. It's in partnership with the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They hosted Event 201, a high-level pandemic exercise on October 18th in New York City. The exercise illustrated areas where public-private partnerships. Now, if you know Agenda 21, you know one of the keys to implementing UN Agenda 21 Sustainable Development is via public-private partnerships. But these public-private partnerships for Event 201 and a global pandemic will be necessary during the response of a severe pandemic in order to diminish large-scale economic and societal consequences, whatever that means. So here's a statement about ENCO and our pandemic exercise. In October 2019, the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security hosted a pandemic tabletop exercise called Event 201. So Johns Hopkins hosted an event called Event 201. Recently, the Center for Health Security has received questions about whether that pandemic exercise predicted the current novel coronavirus outbreak in China. To be clear, the Center for Health Security and partners did not make a prediction during our tabletop exercise. For the scenario, we modeled a fictional coronavirus pandemic, but we explicitly stated that it was not a prediction. In other words, you see, they're trying to cover their butt. Instead, the exercise served to highlight preparedness and response challenges that would likely arise in a very severe pandemic. We are not now predicting that the nCoV 219 outbreak will kill 65 million people. Although our tabletop exercise included a mock novel coronavirus, the inputs we used for modeling the potential impact of the fictional virus are not similar to nCoV 219. Really? Because they talked about how they would respond and that they would need masks and that they would need all these things. So it doesn't matter if it actually fit every detail, the outcome has. So what they originally described for why they named it Event 201, it goes something like this. They declare that about every year we have around 200 so-called pandemics, but they're worried about the very next one. So they know within those approximately 200 pandemics that there's serious ones, because SARS was one of those. But they're worried about the next one. And that didn't fly with me. I was like, that does not make sense. So we hit 200 pandemic, and 201 is all of a sudden going to be this one that has disrupted the world forever, that has shut down families and businesses and taken kids out of schools. Do you have a question? Oh, okay. So it just was not sitting with me. So I had to do some research. I told you I called everybody and was like, hey, have you looked into this? So Johns Hopkins Center and the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates foundations were key in this. And so, but what's interesting about Johns Hopkins, and with Willie's help and some friends of ours, I'm going to research Johns Hopkins a little bit more. Johns Hopkins is financed by Michael Bloomberg. And we know Michael Bloomberg feels that the earth is overpopulated. So anyway, and the Rockefellers and a few others. They have a powerful partnership. You can see the United Nations is involved, World Bank, and all through this thing called Gavi, which Bill and Melinda Gates donates to. They have Gavi was formed to give people vaccines, and you can see a critical role in strengthening primary health care and bringing us closer to the Sustainable Development Goal of universal health care coverage. Gavi is about a one world protection, or one world protected. So the theme here is, how do you get to a one world governance using crises? Down here at this lower picture here, you can see it's the U.S. State Department, U.S. Department of State, USAID, and Gavi. Do you know that the Biden administration spent a whole day doing fundraising? It was televised fundraising for Gavi so that the whole world can be vaccinated. So using our federal government to support vaccinating all people in the world. And we know that Gavi is a part of fulfilling on the Sustainable Development Goals. Gavi feels that vaccines improve learning. Immunization increases educational attainment, since vaccinated children learn more while they are able to go to school. Because if you're not vaccinated, you will not be going to school. Immunization empowers women and girls. Immunization is a gender-equal intervention. Globally, girls and boys are immunized at similar rates. However, there are variations at subnational levels, and in some countries, because a range of different barriers inhibits women's ability to access health care for the children. Okay, get your government to take care of that. If that is what you want, that is a simple problem to solve. But you know what the problem is it doesn't involve all of us, so we got to take it a step further. We got to get everybody immunized through Sustainable Development Goals. Efficient equipment. Okay, did you know that getting vaccinated, it causes efficient equipment and cleaner environment? Immunization brings newer, cleaner, and more sustainable technology to developing countries' health systems. Really? Okay, I'm not getting it. But for instance, Gavi's cold chain equipment optimization platform gives countries access to solar and energy efficient refrigeration, which is not only more reliable and cost effective, but also more environmentally friendly. Oh, now I get it. Okay, got it. Okay, so I'm going to go get immunized just for that. Healthy population, more productive workforce. Investment in human capital can dramatically strengthen a country's competitiveness. Investment in human capital. Okay, so therefore, immunization, human capital, strengthen. Okay, vaccinated, healthy children grow into a productive workforce and become strong contributors to the economy. But if your child is not vaccinated, in addition, healthy children free up parents' time so they are able to work. Immunization, healthier cities. By 2050, nearly 70% of the global population will be living in urban areas. The numbers that I am hearing at conferences is 80. In fact, I went to United Nations Habitat 9 in Malaysia. That's where Willie's from. I got to spend time with Willie's best friends. And their goal was over 80% of the world's population living in cities. The number of people living in slums or informal settlements has also grown over 1 billion, many of whom lack access to basic healthcare services. So strengthening urban immunization programs protects them against the increased risk of disease outbreaks. This is why they want you and me vaccinated. Because according to them, we are now the threat. The unvaccinated are now the threat. Vaccines, mitigation of climate change impact. The impact of climate change cuts across health and well-being, livelihood, and security of people, particularly for the poorest and most vulnerable communities, such as people on the move. Immunization is critical to building peoples and systems resilient to reducing the risk of outbreaks due to climate-sensitive diseases. Strong health systems, long-term stability, effective, safe, and people-centered health systems are the backbone of social institutions, so therefore get immunized. Let's see. I was talking to Alex one day and he said, Debbie, you gotta go look at this. It's funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, and you'll see it's called One for All, an action plan for financing global vaccination and sustainable growth. So look down here. I think Alex showed the picture of this guy yesterday. It says, it is not enough to fully vaccinate. Sometimes in their documents, you have to read through between the lines. It is not enough to fully vaccinate the richest parts of the world. Vaccine nationalism is short-sighted. But we cannot stop there. COVID-19 has delivered a once-in-a-century shock. Never let a crisis go to waste. The world tumbled into the COVID-19 catastrophe together. We must emerge from it together. As we enter the second year of the pandemic, this call to action, as well as the follow-on plans to come, will offer a roadmap for how we can do so and realize a more sustainable and equitable future for all. They are connecting everything we've been talking about under UN Agenda 21, Sustainable Development. So they use this thing called Event 201 to do what? How has your life changed since Event 201? And it's changed dramatically. And do you think we'll ever go back before Event 201, the way things were? Who thinks we will go back? You think we'll go back to the way things were?
I do.
Good. Well, I'm glad there's one person who has hope in that direction. So, Event 201, we kind of have an idea what it was about. We know the impacts of this thing, we kind of have an idea about. So now, what was Event 101 that led to Event 201? What event every year has changed our life forever after it happened? Who thinks 9/11?
Yeah.
9/11. So I started thinking, how do I figure? So I started looking up Event 101, and all things come up on Event 101. All things, tons of things. And I did different search items, and over a year, like I said, I just couldn't come up with what it was. I had an idea, and I posed the idea to other people, and some people said 9/11, and I don't remember what Alex said, but it wasn't 9/11. I think he eventually guessed 9/11, but there were different, can anybody think of some of the other major things? I've drawn a blank on them. The wars, Sandy Hook, let's see, what else was there? Columbine, all these different things, right, that happened. But if you think about those things didn't dramatically change our life yet, right? So 9/11 was where I was searching because that made most sense to me. And as a result of 9/11, what do we have to do every time we travel? And how do you stand, Pastor? Will you show us? Stand up and show us? Right. You what? Okay. But isn't this so funny? I found this is Trip Savvy. I found this on their website. Look at the TSA agent. I would be embarrassed to the pink too, and be wearing glasses to hide my identity but maybe those are protective eyewear. And the pink is radiation on her face as she's looking at the monitor. So the result is this. It's grandma groping is the other option. And I get grandma groped. I get groped because I refuse to stand like this. Because what does this represent? Surrender. It represents surrender. It represents hands up. Don't shoot. And consider COVID. I was in Alabama at my niece's graduation earlier this year. We went to a restaurant, and while we were not wearing our masks, they had to take our temperature. And when my sister was at the what do you call it, the hostess counter first. She made the reservation, and the hostess says, we've got to take your temperature. You don't have to wear a mask, but we have to take your temperature. And she takes out her temperature gun and puts it to my sister's head. And my sister said, oh, whoa, no, you do not do that to my head. My sister said, but this is being armed with information, because I don't know if I would have reacted the same way, because she's been researching this, and she knew that doing it on your wrist has the same effect. So she said, you can do me on my wrist, and you will do my entire family on their wrist too. So, hands up, don't shoot. So I was researching, and what I found on Johns Hopkins was the key for me finding out what I was looking for, which was what is Event 101. So you can't, I believe it's October 9th, 2001. It might be 2002 that this pamphlet came out. I cannot remember, I apologize. But, so on this pamphlet I found of Johns Hopkins was about disaster preparedness. And they were discussing the 3 S's of the critical event preparation for SARS. And then I saw in their critical event 101, and I was like, oh my gosh, okay, so here's the tie. Johns Hopkins is involved in both. Johns Hopkins says that it was part of planning, creating event 201. And so what critical event 101, dear colleagues, and this is an internal newsletter to employees and people, to employees and nurses and people who work within Johns Hopkins. Dear colleagues, as the articles in this issue of Hopkins on Alert readily demonstrate, CPAR. So CPAR is their action for when there's a disaster, has actively been engaged in critical event drills on the regional level, as well as in discussions with colleagues nationally about surge capacity planning for handling a rapid influx of disaster victims. All hospitals are prepared to handle disasters. So they're saying, because of this event that we went through and the preparing that we do, all hospitals are prepared to handle disasters. In addition, all hospitals and healthcare organizations perform disaster drills to test their preparedness. So this was their goal, and they've had how many years to do this, right? And what did we hear in COVID? That the hospitals were filled, right? That they were filled to capacity. But since 9/11, Johns Hopkins, a huge hospital system with lots of money coming in from Rockefellers and Bloombergs, was not prepared for COVID, was not prepared for what they had been preparing for. Johns Hopkins has long been prepared to handle any disaster involving trauma, they say. Now we have developed disaster plans to address the new risks of biological, chemical, and radiological terrorist events. We are refining and testing these plans continually. Personally, let's see, the FAQ section on the CPAR internet site provides the answers to a number of additional questions you may have, as well as links to the websites that offer more information on what you personally remember they're talking to their employees can do to prepare for a disaster on national and local preparedness agencies and on biological, chemical, and radiological agents that could be part of a terrorist attack or natural disaster. Many of these subjects were topics we never contemplated before September 11th, 2001. Now 2 years later, so this is 2003, 2 years later, they are central to our concerned efforts to prepare for and successfully respond to any critical event. So fast forward, Johns Hopkins is a part of Event 201. And remember, their lame excuse was every year we have 200 pandemics, but we're concerned about that next one. That doesn't fly with me. Does it fly with you? Does that make sense to you? To me, we know these people have an agenda, but they always need an excuse that comes off as, you know, we're just trying to help the public and we're just trying to be good citizens. And we know, just like with the Sustainable Development Goals, what is Sustainable Development Goal number 1? No hunger. Doesn't that sound like just a benevolent idea? It sounds awesome. And so what they've given them the task to do is feed the world. And look what they're doing to California, destroying it. Their goals are what they say to the public, and they don't lie to us, because when you start digging, you find the answers. This is why Alex and I go to their conferences, so we get first-hand information from their mouths. By the way, I have to share this real quickly. Alex covered this story, and if I had the video, I would show it to you, but I don't right now. And when I was at the United Nations Civil Societies Conference in Salt Lake City, it was the very first major United Nations conference that the public could go to. Look, their headquarters are in New York. You can go there anytime. They have meetings there all the time, but this one was huge for the civil society. That's you and me. A couple things happened. One is I happened to be at the right place at the right time, Almighty God, where a woman was being harassed by the United Nations law enforcement in Salt Lake City at the Salt Palace where this conference was. And she was a mom of 4 with her four young kids taking video. And at the same time, her kids were handing out like little business cards. And in the upper right-hand corner, cute little boy came up and handed me one. And immediately in the upper right-hand corner of that business card, I saw a UN logo with a cross, with a cross over it. And I knew, hundreds of thousands of Americans should have been there doing the same thing. Well, anyway, the United Nations heard about this and they tried to push her out. And she's filming. She's saying, Amy is her name, and she's saying, it's online, you can watch it. And she's filming saying, wait a minute, this is my city. I pay taxes here. This is a free conference. I can be filming in here with my children. No, you need to go pick up your things is what they're saying. And you're blocking the elevator. And she's like, wait, look, the elevator is, the sign says out of use. Nobody has used this all day. We've been here for a couple hours. We're sorry. You need to make room for people coming up. Okay, so right, she was going to lose that argument. So they kept harassing her, and finally one of the United Nations officers says, look, I'm a mom too, and she says, but as of Sunday, the United Nations took over this facility. It's a United Nations compound. And Amy's like, what? So I was there filming Amy when all this started happening. So you see me in my pink shirt in this, and then I've got my own video of it. And so the United Nations police officer says, she points to the door, just like those, leading outside. And she says, in here, she said, either way, in here, United Nations, out there, United States of America. Unbelievable. So the other thing that happened is I was in a panel discussion, watching a panel discussion with the United Nations on nature, harmony with nature, right? And one of the panelists, I don't remember his name, David from Africa. He's involved in food and environment. And there's 4 panelists, and you can tell he's just anxious to speak. And he says, I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room. And he says, population. Population. How come he's like, nobody wants to talk about population being the problem. So I couldn't wait to talk to him till after the event. And I'm always afraid. Alex just gets his camera out and sticks it in their face and he doesn't care, but I am not quite like that. He's laughing. So I have my camera down and I'm filming and I kind of purge him and I say, hey, you know what? I just want to acknowledge you for talking about population because it's a real problem, isn't it? He's like, yeah, it's a real problem. And so it takes about 13 minutes or so before I can finally get it out of him. And somewhere in that 13 minutes, but it took a long time. And I said, can you tell me more? I kept saying, can you tell me more? And he says, about population. And he says, it finally gets to a point where he says, we cannot kill them all. And he's laughing. We cannot kill them all. What? I know, you used it. So, and then he says it again, we cannot kill them all. And he's sort of laughing. And then he says, we cannot kill them all. So we know their goal, right? And what do we know about what we've learned about 9/11? We've learned that planes are unsafe. How many of you hear a plane and every once in a while you look up to make sure it's not coming down? I got one hand up over there. How many of you, when you get on a plane, think, okay, I hope we make it to our destination. I hope nobody on here is evil. We think that buildings are unsafe. For those who saw Building 7 or know that Building 7 went down, all of a sudden a building can just go down from a shrapnel from the Twin Towers going down. So now we're hearing buildings are unsafe in the news lately. So buildings are unsafe. People from far away, like terrorists, are unsafe. And I put it that way because ranchers, the Hammonds, are considered terrorists, and they're unsafe. And we are reminded that of that the second we go to plan our next vacation, right? Every time we are reminded of 9/11. Because why? Because you get to stand like this, hands up, and you get to get exposed, or you get to get groped and felt up. You get all your personal belongings looked through. Your identity taken. Meaning, all those private things that you consider private, your body, your things, under their control, or you do not get on that plane. You do not get the privilege of flying. And you know, in America, we have freedom of mobility, but I guess that doesn't matter anymore because these are public-private partnership companies. So, not only are we reminded when we fly, but every year around 9/11 leading up to and during, we're reminded what? Never. What are we to never forget?
False flag terror.
We are never to forget that life is scary. That today you could die. Because on those 9/11 never forget pictures that we see, how many times do we see a picture of the people who died? Do you even know of a name, a person who died that day? I don't. But what's branded on my brain forever are 2 buildings burning, a plane coming in, some mysterious building 7, it's not mysterious, but some building 7 that we hear little about, and yet do we know what happened on 9/11 truly? We do not know. Do we know what happened with COVID-19? We don't. Do you think we ever will? I don't think so. Well, maybe when we're with God. COVID-19, people 5 feet 11, and I couldn't figure out the math, Willie. So 5 feet 11 inches, what would be 6 feet? 11? 5 feet 11 inches what? Point what? So what's the next, you know what I'm saying? So if you're less, so it's 6 feet, right? So anything less than 6 feet is unsafe. So people who are less than 6 feet away from you are unsafe is what we're learning about COVID-19. Your neighbor is unsafe now. Your neighbor is a risk to your family now. We're hearing that families will be taken out if they do not get the vaccine because they are unsafe. And we're hearing that children under the age of 3 are unsafe. People not wearing government-mandated diapers are unsafe. And people not volunteering to be an experimental government rat are unsafe. So the message is we are unsafe, and unlike anthropogenic, man-made global warming climate change, which is a hoax, these things are truly man-made. So my question, and I'm opening up, what is Event 301? Here's the freedoms we still have. Or okay, so here's my question. What is it that we still have that when you're in the game of taking over the world and an agenda to one world government system, what is it that you and I still have that they need in order to implement their goal of a one world government system? Yes, sir.
Money.
Okay, control of money, okay. But they have that, Pastor.
But not digital yet. Still cash.
Oh, no, you can hack any computer system.
You can still have cash.
And think about cash. Okay, so think about when but you're limited to how much cash you can have. Because who's going to carry around, when you're on the run, who's going to carry around a bag of, $20,000? That's awfully heavy. You cannot take it with you. But you cannot take it with you when you need it as much as you do when you're on the run. And you need to okay? So, plus, when you go to an ATM, you're limited every day to how much money you can take out. So, okay, so money. Got it. Check it off. Nope, they've got control of it. Yes, sir. Truth? That's a good one. But with propaganda and the media and controlling the media, they can control what they say is true. Okay, what else? Bonnie. Your mind, yeah, but they can give you drugs and shoot you up with, right? What?
The Constitution.
No, they're eroding that. They are usurping the Constitution. They are implementing, all the Department of Interior, the Homeland Security, all of those agencies are unconstitutional, but they're making law anyway.
So you're getting to life.
Well, they don't have your life yet. Right. Okay, so we've talked about money. Okay, you might say, I still have my children, right? Nope, forced vaccination. They're taking you through your education. And here, I want to say this. I know Alex says, get your children out of public school. I totally agree. But you, as parents and grandparents, have to have your hand on their education. Because if you are the enemy, if you are the devil, if you are Satan, wouldn't you set up this awesome at-home system and then tweak it and manipulate it to indoctrinate the children anyway? Charter schools have been doing this. So you really have to have a hand on your children's education. Really, like looking at, even if it's someone you trust, you have no idea who they've been talking to and they've been duped by. Okay, our health, nope, with events like COVID, they now have, and with, they're totally controlling the health system, and they will continue. Look who they're funded by. Land, water, climate, with property taxes, you are a renter. You do not, you think you own your land, but don't pay taxes, income taxes 1 year, don't pay property taxes, and you watch how quickly you do not own your land. They can take it from you in a second. Let's see, I have giving human rights to non-human objects. Okay, so now, right, like we know the Declaration for the Moon. Mert. Guns. I believe, and I don't know if Event 301 is a gun grab, but that's my guess. Somebody has said a cyber pandemic is coming, where they shut, is that what the name of it is? Yeah, EMPs, where they shut the internet off, and there's some big bomb that shuts everything down. So what I want to say is that there will be a next major event, because they do not have what they want, which is your guns. Our last protection besides God.
And then they take your life.
And then they can take anything. So I pose this because I believe that, with Agenda 21 and knowing it as well as we do, we were able to predict that a long time ago, that if you don't want people, if you think that traveling is a big carbon footprint, that planes are causing a big global footprint, and you want to make it inconvenient for people to fly, what do? You make it inconvenient. So we're going to charge you an arm and a leg just to fly these days. We're going to make you stand in long lines. We're going to make you get, you're going to have to stand like this. We're going to go through all your things. We're going to make it inconvenient. Now we're going to do the next step, which is, and they do this in Africa. So if you think about what happens elsewhere, in Africa, I think Alex can get away with it, but I believe that most people have to get a vaccination 6 months before they go to Africa, or you're not let in. So these things are not hard to figure out where they're going next, right? So I think that if we can figure out, put our finger on what they want and what they're after, we can start figuring out their next moves. Do you agree with me?
Yes.
So what do we need to do? We need to be armed and stay armed. And one is keep your guns, and that's what we need to fight for right now. There's legislation right now going on to try and take all guns. And so we need to keep on top of that. And then the other thing is be armed. Be armed with education. Be armed with the Bible and the Word of God. And the last thing I want to say is educate, communicate, and do not hibernate. It was Daniel Webster who said, if all my possessions were taken from me, I would choose the power of communication, for by it I would soon regain all the rest. Right now, we still have our voice, even though they are peeling away our First Amendment rights. But we still have our voice to educate our people. And I think we need to be mad, mean, sharing machines. That every opportunity to me I see as an opportunity to share. Whether you're in the line of a grocery store and they want you to buy a paper bag or a plastic bag, it is a perfect opportunity to either talk about what my cousin Nancy brought up the other day, which is, oh, isn't it funny, before COVID, we all had to buy paper bags and use their paper, and they encouraged us to bring our own bags in, right? Yeah. Well, now they don't want you to bring in your own bag, and they want you to they want you buying their bag. So, they want you to buy their bag originally because it's supposed to save planet Earth. So it's a perfect opportunity to say, oh my gosh, you guys have heard me say this before. So I'm going to buy this plastic bag, and all my produce and everything that's coming down your plastic conveyor is supposed to go in that plastic bag. But here comes my plastic milk, right? My toothpaste, which the container is plastic, and my toothbrush, which is plastic. And all those safety measures put on food, which are plastic, because remember, food was unsafe at one time. It could be tampered with. So we, to protect our food, which is a really smart idea, we put single-use plastic on it. So you want me to buy a plastic bag when I have all this plastic coming down, the conveyor belt, and then I'm supposed to stick my plastic credit card into your plastic credit card money-taking machine, and that is supposed to save planet Earth? There are so many opportunities around us to talk about everything that we're talking about this weekend, and I just want to say that if we don't use those opportunities and even make them up, like create them around you, we're missing the greatest opportunity to educate our friends and our family and possibly stop the takedown of our country, because the other thing that they don't have is the masses. We still have access to the masses, and what they fear most is an armed mass. Amen? Amen. So, I would love to hear from you over the next whatever, from here to the next Camp Constitution. I guarantee Event 301 will not happen between now and the next Camp Constitution. I think they're going to ratchet up Event 201 because they're not done with us, and too many people are not following their orders now. So they're going to ratchet it up. Things are going to get tougher. It's going to hurt, but they don't have your guns yet. But they're getting you ready. So there we go. So I want to hear from you what you think 301 is, because if we can figure it out, we can figure them out at another level, and I can't wait. So, okay, thanks for sitting in.